after a trench collapsed in Wyoming. Another person trapped has been rescued.
That trench collapsed along Jordan Street Southwest near Division and 36th. And that's where 24-Hour News 8's Joe LaFurgey is live tonight. Joe?
And as you said, unfortunately for one of the victims here today, that rescue turned to a recovery effort. We are in front of the house on Jordan Street. I want to show you the conditions those two victims were working in. This is the trench they were digging to that home to replace the sewer line. As you can see, that trench is anywhere from 10 to 12 feet deep in some spots. I was talking to some firefighters. They tell me that the rule of thumb is when you're digging a trench like this, that anything above waist high that's going to put you more than waist high down should have some kind of reinforcement, some kind of plywood shoring in here. In fact, that wasn't the case. We talked to one witness who told me of the wall of dirt that came down on the two men.
Working at Aegeon, you should hear the term life-saving rules quite often. But this isn't just a phrase or a catchy new initiative. These are rules that can have an impact to saving a life. Following these rules minimizes the risk involved with some of Aegeon's most dangerous tasks. Excavations and trenches are a major part of the job within the corrosion protection platform. And for this reason, the CPP has declared excavations as one of the life-saving rules. In this training, we'll dive in to ensure we all understand the hazards associated with excavations.
Hi everyone, my name is Julian Arevalo, Safety Director for Corporate US. Today, we are going to talk about Aegeon life-saving rule for safe excavation. Disturbing the ground and entering excavations is one of the most routine but high-risk activities that Aegeon colleagues perform every day around the globe. It is also one of the activities where most people die or get seriously injured on the job. Excavation safety is very important for us. During the next few minutes, we are going to discuss the details of Aegeon's life-saving rule, which has two key primary elements: identifying properly any potential structure that is located on the excavation site and verifying their presence through probing or using hydro or air excavation. And the second element is not allowing anyone to enter an excavation unless it is properly sloped, benched, or protected by any means that is adequate for the type of soil conditions.
Before we get started on the details, let's take a look at a few definitions for some of the material we're going to cover. An excavation is defined as any man-made cut, cavity, trench, or depression formed by earth removal. A trench is a type of excavation that has a depth greater than its width, but not greater than 15 feet wide. Shields are structures that are able to withstand the force of a cave-in and shield workers and equipment within. Shoring is a structure that supports the sides of a trench to protect and resist cave-ins. Sloping refers to a technique that prevents cave-ins by sloping the sides of an excavation at an angle that greatly reduces or eliminates cave-in potential. The last definition is for the competent person. A competent person must have specific excavation training, be knowledgeable of soil classification, use of protective systems, and the requirements of excavation standards. A competent person must be able to identify excavation hazards and must have the authority to correct or eliminate these hazards. Prior to removing soil and forming an excavation, we must have knowledge about what lies underneath. This could include various types of utilities, pipelines, or buried material. Most of this can be determined by completing a one-call prior to excavation. This is a requirement before any digging begins to allow for verification of underground utilities. Hand probing and hydro-excavating are both methods to ensure lines and underground utilities aren't damaged or ruptured when digging. The force of a backhoe or excavator can easily damage any utilities that the bucket comes into contact with. By hydro-excavating, it's much safer to determine what lies beneath prior to digging with more aggressive earth-moving equipment. Different types of soil require different guidelines for safe excavations. Hard, compact clay is much more stable than granular soil such as sand. Therefore, the characteristics of each type of soil allows us to determine which category the soil falls into based on how stable the soil is for excavation. Stable rock is classified as the most stable, followed by Class A soil, such as clay. Class B soil is less stable than Class A and requires greater sloping for safe excavation. Class C soil has very low cohesive strength, such as sand or loose gravel. This classification requires a much greater slope to be considered a safe excavation. Looking at the table here, you can see the difference in sloping requirements for each classification. Stable rock allows for 90-degree walls, while width to height ratio of type A soil must be 3/4 to 1. Class B is 1 to 1, or a 45-degree slope, and Class C soil is 1.5 to 1. The instability of Class C soil makes it necessary to remove 1.5 feet of soil horizontally for every 1 foot of soil removed vertically, as depicted in the picture on the bottom right. It's important to note that these requirements are only valid for excavations less than 20 feet in depth. An excavation over the 20-foot mark must be designed by a qualified engineer. Type C soil is very common in our line of work. This picture shows the proper slope required for work in a Class C excavation. Again, the slope must be a minimum of 1.5 to 1, or 34-degree slope. Additionally, in the U.S., all excavations and trenches must have a minimum of 2 feet between the excavation edge and the spoils pile. This distance is 1 meter in Canada. Another method, called benching, is similar to sloping. The angles for Class A and Class B soil are the same as the angles for proper sloping, 53 degrees and 45 degrees respectively. This method allows for excavating a series of stepped benches on the sides of the excavation rather than a flat trench face. As you can see, the rule regarding placement of the spoils pile is still necessary. Another method to reducing the risk of collapse is through shoring or shielding. Installation of a trench box requires much less soil removal than sloping or benching. When installed correctly, shielding and shoring provide adequate protection for workers that must enter excavations or trenches. However, to benefit from this protection, workers must stay within the confines of the shored or shielded area at all times. Access and egress must be made within this protective area as well. Trench boxes and shoring systems must be installed according to governmental regulations at a minimum. This involves ensuring that the height of the trench box exceeds the height of the excavation walls around it. The base of the trench box must also be the proper height from the base of the excavation. The picture here shows the importance of ensuring a trench box is adequately installed prior to entry. If not installed properly, it can easily be overcome during a collapse or cave-in. The trench box seen here offered very little protection, as well as a false sense of security to anyone working inside. When working in or around an excavation, it is important to know the signs of potential cave-ins or collapses. There are steps we can take to ensure the risk of cave-ins are reduced or properly mitigated. We spoke earlier about placement of the spoils pile at an adequate distance from the excavation lip or opening. However, vibration from heavy equipment can also play a factor when in close proximity. Ensure all equipment is an adequate distance from the excavation to reduce the amount of vibration the excavation is exposed to. Water, sheared excavation lips or walls, cracks, sloughing, and fissures are all signs that an excavation is at risk. Know what to look for and discuss any of the early signs that an excavation is at risk. The competent person will need to be responsible for analyzing the signs prior to entry and must be competent to know when and where excavations may be deteriorating. If you see something at risk, be vocal about it. We all have the obligation and responsibility to use our stop work authority when we suspect an unsafe act. This could include unnecessary risk, inadequate training or understanding, or dangerous conditions. Each employee has the responsibility to stop and address any unsafe issues prior to proceeding. This is regardless of your position or length of time within the company. In fact, oftentimes, new employees with fresh eyes may notice unnecessary risks that other employees have grown complacent to. In any unsafe situation, it is imperative that we stop and reassess the task, priorities, and the safety of ourselves and coworkers. There will never be any retaliation for using your stop work authority. If you see something, say something. Anytime there is a concern, it is better to address it earlier rather than later. Waiting can be too late and have severe consequences. If you have the thought or feeling that you should maybe stop work, then chances are that others have the same feeling. Once you have this in mind, it's time to address it right away. One step backwards to reassess the situation is often the quickest and safest way forward. Using the stop work authority is a step in our safety program that is admired, appreciated, and respected. We need to remember to use the tools we are given to elevate our safety culture. This is our path to be better and strive for zero incidents.